In the Vietnam War, regular infantry units went out in platoons of 40 men. They carried everything the army told them to carry, and the enemy heard them coming from a mile away. But there was another kind of soldier, men who volunteered to go where no one else would, who stripped their gear down to the bare minimum, who moved through the jungle like ghosts. They were LRRPs, called LRRPs, and the gear they carried wasn't just equipment. It was the difference between coming home and becoming another name on the wall. To understand why LRRP gear mattered so much, you need to understand what these men actually did. Regular infantry patrols worked in company or platoon strength, 40, sometimes 100 men. They had artillery support, air cover, medevac on call. If things went sideways, help was coming. LRRPs operated in 6-man teams, sometimes 4. They inserted by helicopter into areas crawling with North Vietnamese army regulars. Their mission was simple: watch, report, and get out without being seen.
Should we even bring any food or anything, or just like a lot of extra ammo? And everybody's going, Chambers, shut up. They would get so pissed off because I would say these goofy comments, but the way they painted it, we weren't coming back. So I figured, why bring a bunch of extra stuff if we're only going to go out and get, shot? I don't know.
Here's what made it terrifying. If a LRRP team got into trouble, they were on their own. Extraction helicopters needed time to scramble. Artillery needed coordinates. And in that time, 6 men would be fighting hundreds. The numbers tell the story. LRRP units achieved kill ratios as high as 400 to 1. Not because they were superhuman, but because they were invisible. And invisibility started with what they chose to carry. The standard infantry rifle in Vietnam was the M16. 20 inches of barrel, 39 inches overall, almost 7 pounds loaded. LRRPs didn't want it. What they wanted was the CAR-15, also called the XM177. It was 6 inches shorter, 2 pounds lighter, and had a collapsible stock that made it perfect for moving through dense vegetation.
Stop. I mean, I had my CAR-15, but I lost count of the number of guys that were sitting on the ground. They were talking to each other. And one guy sort of heard me, and he even turned around and he looked right at me. But, we had total camouflage on. We had tiger fatigues on. So I blended in. And, you just don't think some white American's going to show up, in the jungle when they didn't even hear us. But we would have walked into an ambush. But I walked around behind them. And so I made the decision not to fire them up because I was too close. I literally could reach down and go, excuse me, you guys, I'm now going to shoot you. So, I just held my fire and backed up.
Some CAR-15S came with a sound moderator. It wasn't a true silencer. The rifle was still loud, but it changed the sound signature just enough that enemy soldiers couldn't immediately identify what direction it came from. In a firefight, those few seconds of confusion could save your life. Now, here's where it gets serious. A LRRP team leader might carry 18 to 30 loaded magazines. That's over 500 rounds of ammunition on one man. Why so much? Because if you made contact with the enemy, you weren't calling for resupply. You were fighting your way to extraction. Every round you carried was a round you might need to stay alive. Regular infantry carried Army-issue Alice packs. LRRPs preferred indigenous rucksacks, the kind used by Montagnard tribesmen, lighter, quieter, no metal frame to clank against your weapon. Every piece of gear was modified for stealth. Dog tags were taped together so they wouldn't jingle. Canteens were wrapped in cloth. Rifle slings were secured. Nothing moved. Nothing rattled. The camouflage was distinctive. Many LRRP teams wore tiger stripe uniforms, not the standard jungle fatigues. Some spray-painted their rifles and equipment. Shiny surfaces could catch light and give away a position. The most important piece of equipment wasn't a weapon. It was the radio. The AN/P RC-25, called the Prick 25 by soldiers, weighed 23 pounds with battery. One man carried it. If he went down, the mission was probably over. The radio was how you called in artillery, how you directed airstrikes, how you called for extraction. Without it, 6 men in enemy territory were just 6 men waiting to die. Regular soldiers ate C rations, heavy cans that had to be opened, heated, and disposed of. Every empty can was evidence. Every cooking fire was a signal. LRRPs developed their own ration system. Freeze-dried meals that could be eaten cold, mixed with canteen water. Lighter to carry. No cooking required. No evidence left behind. Water came from streams and was treated with iodine tablets. Some teams carried IV bags, not for wounds, but for silent hydration. You could drink from an IV bag without making the gulping sounds that might give away your position. Every team carried claymore mines. These weren't for offense, they were insurance. When you set up for the night, you positioned claymores around your perimeter. If the enemy found you in the dark, you had a way to break contact. Some teams carried starlight scopes, early night vision devices. They were heavy and temperamental, but they let you see movement in the dark. In the jungle, that advantage was worth the extra weight. Medical supplies were critical, but minimal. Morphine syrettes for wounds, bandages, IV fluids if you had room. The philosophy was simple. Carry enough to stabilize someone for extraction, nothing more. Understanding what LRRPs refused to carry tells you as much as what they took. No helmets, too heavy, too hot, and they blocked your hearing. LRRPs relied on boonie hats or went bareheaded. In close jungle, hearing. The snap of a twig could save your life. No flak jackets. Weight that slowed you down wasn't protection. It was liability. If you were moving right, the enemy never got close enough for a flak jacket to matter. No unit patches, no name tapes. Nothing that could identify you if captured, or identify your unit if you didn't make it back. The math was brutal. A regular infantry soldier might carry over 100 pounds. LRRPs stripped that down to 60 or 80 pounds of absolute essentials. Those 20 to 40 pounds you didn't carry were 20 to 40 pounds that let you move faster, quieter, longer. Everything modern special operations forces know about lightweight reconnaissance traces back to Vietnam LRRPs. The philosophy of mission-essential equipment. The emphasis on stealth over firepower. The understanding that what you don't carry can be as important as what you do. When the Army created the 75th Ranger Regiment in 1974, the LRRP companies were its foundation. L Company Rangers, K Company Rangers, the men who had learned to survive behind enemy lines. Their lessons became doctrine. The 13 LRRP companies that served in Vietnam wrote the playbook for small unit reconnaissance that's still used today. Every piece of gear they chose, every ounce they calculated, every modification they made was paid for in blood. 6 men, 80 pounds, 5 days behind enemy lines. The gear didn't make them ghosts, but it gave them a chance. And for the men who came home, that chance was everything.